Okay, so guys, what else are they telling us here? If we're going kind of in a downward direction, we've got take out flyaways, done it. Darken edges all around, done it. Lighten eyes and less yellow, done it. Tone down highlights. This is where that second exposure comes in. So I'm going to open up that exposure too. And remember in, I think it was first semester, that guy in the jungle. We took a raw file, we processed it out for him, then we processed it out again a little bit darker, and we used that to paint in the background around him. Why not just do dodging and burning? Like, why wouldn't I just, make a dodge and burn layer and darken down these highlights, or a curves layer and darken down the highlights? If they're blown out to white, can you darken it down? Yeah, there'd be no detail. You can put a gray layer, kind of a gray mask over top of it, but you're not going to get back image information. That's the problem with RAW. If this had been, the photographer had been shooting in RAW, and they're like click, 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 and uh-oh, no detail in there. They can't, or sorry, if they've been shooting in JPEG, they can't get that back. But in RAW, you can take that RAW file, process it again a little bit darker, or if you're in a hurry, you could use the adjustment brush, and get that detail. Look at that. There's skin tone. Okay, well, there's that kind of blown out detail. Look at that. You can see the texture in the flower petals up there. You're losing it over here. Now, she's too dark. The background's too dark. We only want these bits here. We could try to select just the flowers and drag them over, but probably easier to take this entire layer. And how can we get this over to the other document? I could duplicate the layer. Right-click, choose Duplicate Layer, or you can go to this little pop-up up here, choose Duplicate Layer. And for the destination, where are we sending it? To the PSD, to the Exposure 1 PSD. Let's pop over to that document. And there's that darker one stacked on top. And of course, it's hiding everything. So let's give it a layer mask. Now guys, we could give it a layer mask and invert it, Command-I, and that would completely hide it. What's a faster way of automatically calling up a hide all layer mask? Remember the Option key often reverses what something does? If you hold the Option key and add layer mask, watch what happens. Doink! It automatically gives it a hide all layer mask. And then it's just a matter of taking some white paint. So grab a paintbrush, load her up with some white paint, and we can paint those highlights back in. So we're basically just revealing that darker exposure in the areas where we want to see that detail, like this flower up here. Blown out highlights. Now we have nice highlights. Maybe we'll do a little bit on the side table here as well. So maybe we have a little bit in here. There we go. There's a before, and there's an after. And if you want to do a total before and after, if you go to the background layer, you can turn off all the eyeballs except the background layer by option clicking on the eyeball of the background layer. So here's what it looked like when we first opened it up, and here's where we are now. So you can see the stray hairs have been removed, the vignetting, you can see the eyes and the teeth look better, the detail in the flowers has come back. Okay, now the next thing on this map, guys, here, it says show green background here. And the idea that, what they're thinking about here is because we see the shirt or some piece of fabric folded out here, it's kind of making her seem a bit wider. So if we could see this tile background showing through that gap, it would make her appear a little bit slimmer. Now, I realize that if you follow this line all the way down, it is actually this bit of tile that would show through here, but being so dark, they felt that it would still kind of give that sense of width. So they want this lighter bit of tile. I'm going to grab it from up here just because this is as dark as that green tile gets. And there's a bunch of ways this could be done. I could use a layer mask on her layer and punch a hole through it, sample this, and just slide it in behind. But I'm going to go the other route. I'm going to take this bit of tile, big chunk of it, more than I think I need. I'm going to stick it over top, and then I'm going to hide it with the layer mask, and I'm going to bring it back only in this area. We'll take a look at where we need to bring it back and how we can match those edges. So I'm just going to take my lasso tool. I'm going to sample. I'm going to select this area up here. And, what's a fast way of getting this popped up onto a new layer, duplicate onto a new layer? Well, thing is, Command-J, right now I have an adjustment layer, or a layer mask on an adjustment layer selected. If I do Command-J, it'll try to sample that. I could go all the way down to, I guess it would be this one here, and then Command-J. I'd have to drag that to the top of the stack. An easier way, if I'm at the top layer here, Edit, Copy, Merged, and then Edit, Paste. And it just sticks that at the top of the stack. So by copying Merged, it takes this layer, the currently selected layer, which was the levels 1, and a merged version of all these layers together. So it takes into account any vignetting, it takes into account any retouching, and it sticks it right at the top of the stack there. Now, it looks like nothing happened, but look at this. There it is. So that's that little chunk that I duplicated up to a new layer at the top. And I'm going to stick that over top of the gap, and I'm going to hide it with a layer mask. Again, a fast way to create a hide all layer mask is to hold down the Option key when you click the Add Layer Mask icon. And then it's just a matter of taking the paintbrush and matching the softness of this edge and bringing the opacity up to 100%. And guys, here's a good chance to use the shift clicking technique. And again, we have an edge here where this is making a corner, but we have a round brush. This isn't going to work. Watch this. So I'm going to click over here. I'm trying to get the top edge of this little mirror, this little makeup thing in front of her. So I'll do a click over here, then I'll hold down the Shift key, and I'll click here. I've gone too far, but that's okay. I'll hit X on the keyboard. Now I have black, and I can hide this. I can cut right back to the edge there. And that means I've got that nice pointy edge. Same thing over here. This shirt seems to end about there, so I only want it to end there. So I'll simply go up to that point. X again to get white, and I can work my way around. That looks like a bit of a soft edge, so I can take a bit of a smaller brush. That seems to match up a bit better. And again, I'll overshoot my target a bit, hit X, and shave that off. And when you're filling in that, it's probably easier if you're looking at the layer mask rather than looking at the results of it. So just Option click on the layer mask, and you can see if you've missed anything. So again, if you follow this line down, it actually, would end before there, but this just kind of gives that sense of slimness to it. Okay, guys, there's one other thing I want to do around this little makeup mirror here that actually isn't in the notes, but I find this reflection here. Like, there's a mirror in the makeup thing here. It's reflecting her elbow, and then I don't even know why, there's a bunch of little mirrors in here that are reflecting the color of her burgundy sweater. I think it might be better if this was reflecting the color of these tiles. It would kind of help give that sense of slimness in there. What are some ways that we could take the tile color and impose it over top of this burgundy sweater color? We could, well, yes, we can play around with it that way, but for a more exact match,
a new layer using color blending.
yeah, just like we did for the chromatic aberration around that tree when we added the sky to the image. If I make a new transparent layer, change its blending mode to color, the only thing it can do is impose its color onto the pixels below. So if I take a paintbrush, sample that green tile color, and it'll look wretched at first, but we'll deal with that. I'm going to start with a lower opacity, maybe 50% or so, and just kind of brush it over top of there. And again, this wasn't specified by the client, but it is a good example of how we can use clipping groups to make things affect only other things. So I've taken this green color and I put it over top, and it looks not great. What if we pulled some of the saturation out of that with maybe a hue and saturation layer? Hue and saturation, pull some of that saturation down. Oh, it's affecting the entire image. How do we make it affect only the layer 3 there? Flip it. So we can ease off that saturation so it looks a little bit more natural. So really it's more of a grayish, kind of a low saturation version of that tile color. And I'll leave you with the last element on this map, the last thing they wanted done. Take out circled flowers. Now they've included this upper flower in the circle. I would just worry about this one that's hanging down below. And it's not going to be fun. I just like to say things as they are. But this is kind of what we're aiming for here. So when you're cloning it out, take a look at the fabric behind and think about where the folds in that fabric would go. We've taken a look at getting rid of folds. Same sort of technique to extend them, instead of going across the fold to try to soften it out, if you go with the fold, in a way a lot like the stray hairs, kind of push these lines in, pull this from the other side, figure out what would be behind there, and try to clone in something appropriate. Guys, when you're doing things like, retouching skin, or in this case, cloning out the flower, you really can do it on the same layer. Like a lot of people, they make new layers for everything they do, but here's the layer where I was cloning out the stray hairs. Let me just turn off the edit map here. This is my stray hair editing layer. And for cloning the flowers, I can use the same one. Grab a clone stamp, maybe a lower opacity. And again, I want to look at the direction that these folds are going, and I'm just going to sample here, and I'll start pushing some of that fabric over top of the flower. Start over here, and I'm at a low opacity. I'm at around 50% or so, and I'm kind of doing multiple clicks and drags in the direction I want those wrinkles to go. And basically just kind of hack your way around the outside of that flower. Maybe come at it from this side. It's not fun. It's not meant to be fun. In fact, it's meant to kind of punish you a little bit, because, I'm a bit masochistic. So just keep pecking away at the flower, and eventually it'll submit and disappear. Oh, another thing, guys, if you're cloning away and you can't quite get the flower to disappear, take a look at your stacking order. If your retouching layer is below that darker exposure layer, remember we brought back in that flower a little bit on this layer? If it's below that, you're going to be seeing this layer. This is where we add in that the darker arm and the darker flowers. And if a little bit of the flower that's hanging down got included in that layer mask, it's going to be visible. So you want to make sure that you take your retouching layer and put it above that darker exposure layer. Now, there may be some softening that ends up around in here. If you need to, you can throw on some fake noise, like we did with when you added yourselves into a photograph. If the image was noisier than what you added in, you can use that gray layer, add some noise, and blend it up. So if you need to, feel free to add a little bit of noise. And you can see without the noise, it does have a bit of a soft sort of blended look to it, a bit of a blurred sort of look, and that noise just kind of helps blend it into the image. You guys, while you're working on that, ponder this. If you look at her mouth, if you look at her teeth here, it looks like there's another tooth inside her mouth. What do you think's going on there? Something to ponder. It's the mirror, isn't it? Why is the mirror giving a second little reflection in there? And you guys are going to notice this. If you try to, let's say you want to photograph something on a mirror and get that reflection in the surface, if you use a regular mirror, has anybody tried this where you notice that it looks like the object is levitating slightly off the surface? Because there's glass there and the mirror is on the back side. And that's what's happening here. We're getting a reflection off the silver on the back of the mirror, and we're also getting a reflection off the glass there. If you're shooting in the studio, have you guys ever heard of a front silvered mirror? Yeah, they're not cheap, but basically instead of, normally they spray the silver onto the mirror, then they spray paint on it, you turn it around, and you look through the glass. With the front silver mirror, they put the silver on, and they just leave it. So if you put an object on that mirror, it's actually touching the mirror. It's not raised off by a few millimeters of glass. So it looks like it's touching. You don't get that double reflection. You just got to be really careful that you don't scratch the silvering on the mirror. Sometimes you can find really tiny ones in old optical scanners and things like that. So finish it up, and if you want to go back, work on the stray hairs. When you're happy with what you've got, save it up, last name, first name.